Welcome to Film Rush.
Welcome back to Film Rush Podcast, everybody, where we talk movies and television on streaming services. We are here to talk about a whole bunch more content for you to watch or maybe not bother with. But first, let's do a check-in. Logan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for thinking of me and checking in. It's so nice to have a friend check in with you once a week. I'm doing all right. It's been a good week so far. We are almost at daylight savings, so I'm really, really excited to have longer days and actually be able to do stuff on the week nights starting next week. So it's starting to get warm, and I'm starting to get excited.
I need to abolish daylight savings and just live
yes,
as normal human beings,
completely
but I agree. Longer days is better.
Yep.
Time just slips by, it seems, these days, and that's really annoying. It either feels like it's a million years long or not at all. But we are going to spend some time today slowing time down for the next hour or so talking about our favorite things, movies and television.
Movies.
So I've got 2 recommends and you have 1. Do you want to do the bounce back and forth? Hit me, hit you, then me?
Yeah, of course. You go first.
All right, we'll do the old classic switcheroo. So first we're going to go with an unexpected entry. And by that I mean my wife and I don't do scary movies. I do a little bit more of scary movies now. I credit watching like scary games being played by other people as like desensitizing me a little bit as I've gotten older. Because I mean now I'm not nearly as bothered as I used to be about some scary movies, but the wife still has a few skeletons in her closet about it. But we ended up watching I Am Legend last night.
Nice. I love that movie.
It was either last night or the night before, but it was like real late. She was painting miniatures, a new hobby she's picking up.
Oh, that's cool.
And I don't remember how I Am Legend came up, but like it did. And she was like, "Ooh, I'm in kind of a spooky mood. We should watch that." And I was like, I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theaters. Like I have not.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it since. I remembered certain moments of it with crystal clarity, but like there were huge swaths that I was pretty gray on. And we watched it again, and I mean, it's still got the tension. The CG has dated a little bit, but really only in one particular way.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like everything else was pretty forgivable, except for, so the creatures actually hold up pretty well. They're a little clay, like they have a bit of a sheen that's not quite what CGI is guilty of today. But the thing that really aged them was the mummy scream that they do. So it worked in The Mummy because he was like a mystical being returned from the dead, but these things, they'll scream and their jaw will like become detached and they'll like do a real long mouth scream.
Right, the big wide CGI jaw.
Yeah. And that didn't work because they're supposed to still be humanoid. They just turned into nocturnal versions of humanoids. But being able to do that with your mouth is not something you can do as a human at all. So it just doesn't really work for me, but otherwise it's still spooky, and that death, though, that was still super sad to watch.
Yes.
The room, Annabelle and I got real quiet whenever that middle death scene happened, and still sad.
Wait, hold on. Are you talking about, because this movie's been out for like 15 years, are you talking about the dog? Are you talking about him?
I'm talking about Doggy.
The dog,
Yeah.
yes. That's a scene that I may have just skipped a few times over the years. When I'm watching that movie, it's a hard scene to get through, and I just don't always want to feel those emotions. But it's a really well done scene. It's hard to get through. It's so sad. Like, you know what's gonna happen because the dog saved his life and got bit in the process, and it just breaks your heart. That whole scene was just really, really intense, where he gets knocked out and then he wakes up and the daylight is running out.
Because the movie has established every single rule that he needs to live by in order to maintain his status quo of safety, and it sequentially breaks every one of his rules throughout that entire sequence, giving you as an audience member a scale for how dangerous the situation is getting at each step. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is really well done. I was like, you don't see a lot of horror movies even bothering with the setup and then the breakdown. They just go straight for the spooky creature in your face, chomp chomp. Like, it's scary because monster. But this movie's like, yeah, the monsters are scary, but it's also scary because literally everything is going wrong. and he can't do anything about it. And that sucks.
Yeah, he's so in control and so just boss level for so long in New York City. That's where they are, right? It's New York?
Yes, New York City.
Yeah, and it's awesome to just see him just rock through town for like the first part of the movie. But that moment when he loses the dog in the building, and then he gets knocked out, and then he wakes up, and you've got the fading sunlight. That is, like, to me, the scariest moment of the movie, because I feel like that is when he is at his most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And it just, that's always the scene that made my hair stand on end the most in that movie. I think that's a really, really well done movie. One of the better zombie apocalypse type movies.
Yes, for sure. I think the alternate ending is better. The one we get is generic. We win, zombies lose, humanity went on. In the alternate ending, for those who may not be in the know, there was an ending that's, I think it's more true to the book also, if I remember correctly. But it's where he realizes that when they're in the basement and the monsters are coming for him, he realizes the monsters aren't really coming for him. He's in the way. They're trying to get the one of them that he had taken.
Yep. Because
they are intelligent and they have community. They used to be human. Now there's something new that maybe we don't like, but we can't help that we don't like them. They still exist and they still have thoughts of their own. And so what can we do to get in the way of that? So he ends up letting the other one go, and him and like the head honcho vampire zombie have like a stare down of angry understanding. And that's more of how that... So it's way more nuanced, and it's not as, like, easy for an American audience to just absorb. So I think that's why they did the swap. But I think it has a lot more substance to it, rather than Will Smith gets grenade and goes boom.
Yeah. That was my introduction to Bob Marley as well. It was the first time I'd ever heard a Bob Marley song when I was a kid. Because this came out in, 2007? So I was 13.
Yeah, around that time.
When this came out, 12, 13, somewhere in there. I think this might be the last great Will Smith performance that we've gotten in the past, 10, 12 years.
I mean, it depends on just when certain ones came out. Like, was Pursuit of Happiness before or after this?
That was 2005.
Okay, so it would have been before, I guess.
2005. So that was just a few years before.
So yeah, that was like the Will Smith assance, was the 03 to the 09 period. He had a lot of solid performances in that time.
Started going through a lot of those dramas.
Yeah, he kind of did. He kind of got the medals on his belt for like drama with a child actor, drama by himself in isolation, drama dealing with death in the 7 Pounds movie.
Oh gosh, I don't like that movie.
That movie has big ups and big downs, so it's kind of a mixed bag. But I think his performance is pretty good.
It is.
I will say also about I Am Legend that what's it called? The new Last of Us show that's in development with Pedro Pascal.
Oh, right. Yes.
That can take some notes off of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because, very similar imagery with the grass and natured over New York City, dangerous zombies, the concept of survival, and doing a lot of storytelling with very little to work with, per se. Now, it won't be a dog. It'll be a girl with Joel, Ellie. But, I think there are some things that they can learn from this movie if they seek to do so.
Yeah, I'm on board with that show. I think the fan castings, at the moment, I'm fine with. I don't know that I'm super like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect. I don't feel that level of enthusiasm for it. But you're right. They should model their world to fit more into the I Am Legend universe than, say, something like The Walking Dead universe, because
we've been Walking Deadified way too much these past few years. It's okay to try new things, or just different things.
One thing I am excited for is to see them make the specific Last of Us type zombies on
clickers.
Yeah, clickers. Would love to see clickers.
Those are terrifying. Yeah, that it could very much be one of the best scary shows out there. I'm looking forward to watching it. I've always loved the story of Last of Us, but the game just never got me.
That's fine. Have you played the second one or seen any of the scariest footage of the second one?
Specifically scariest, I'm not sure. I've seen all of the other footage of the second one that's of like plot substance.
Okay.
But things that are really meant to get your blood pumping, I've not seen a whole ton of.
Okay. There's There's one particular scene where you're in the an ambulance in a hospital in the parking garage, and this big giant like 12-headed blob zombie.
Oh, I did see a glimpse of that in like some random footage somewhere. I can't remember what it was, but they mentioned Last of Us, and then they started talking about scary shit, and then this popped up.
But they could basically with that show take kind of the landscape from I Am Legend, but then almost go like the Thing level of weird with their zombies, because they're like a weird fungal mutation. They're not supposed to be kind of the lazy zombies you get in The Walking Dead, or like the super like hybrid ones you'll get in I Am Legend or World War Z, that are almost like super powered kind of cannibals more than zombies.
Ones are kind of annoying in my opinion. So yeah, I'm glad that we won't probably be getting that. I didn't like mega fast zombies make pile on top of each other ants.
It didn't look good. It just doesn't. No, the Brad Pitt scenes work for me, but yeah, the CGI in that movie is rough.
But yeah,
man, how many zombie movies have we mentioned now? 5, 6? Let's keep going.
Let's go with what's Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead,
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead, technically a zombie movie. Yeah, I Am Legend. I recommend. It's pretty spoopy. CGI is a little dated. Performance is great. Beware of doggy sadness. But otherwise, Logan, you've got something to recommend over there. What you got on your side?
All right, so I have been interested in checking out classic movies. John's thrown a couple my way recently that have been really, really fun to go back and check out. So I took the initiative and I watched The Maltese Falcon for the first time. I actually watched it twice because I might have watched it super late at night and needed to refresh my memory on the last 15 minutes because I may not have made it all the way through. But I've watched the Maltese Falcon twice the last couple of weeks. If you have not seen this movie, if you're not familiar with it, this is the 1941 crime thriller. It's directed by John Huston. It is a story about a private detective played by Humphrey Bogart. And it is one of those twisty-turny, a couple people get murdered, there's an ancient artifact that's gone missing, someone is stealing things and killing other people, and he's got to figure out what's going on. There's a beautiful girl, and he's not sure if he can trust her or if he is falling in love with her. There's a couple of like nighttime shadowy figures he sees watching him through windows. This was a really fun and really fast-paced and quippy movie. I really, really enjoyed The Maltese Falcon. As far as Bogart goes, Casablanca is and probably always will be my favorite. I had seen him in The African Queen. I think this is way more up my alley than The African Queen is. John, are you familiar with The Maltese Falcon? Have you seen this movie?
I've never watched it with like attention on it. I have memories of our Uncle Steve, and at one point when we were at my brother and I were at his house, Maltese Falcon was playing on the television.
Nice.
And we were talking and such. So I don't really remember the plot of the movie per se, but I remember like snippets of acting and moments of the movie. I've never honestly been able to get into this time period of film. It's kind of weird for me because I like movies and I like old movies. There's a lot of old movies I'm a fan of, but like that 1940s era of filmmaking, the acting style and the filmmaking style just rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't meant to be born then, that's for sure, because I would not have been interested in media if I had been. Not to say they're bad, I have a hard time being critical of them because I feel like I don't understand them.
So I think that my parents raised me on old films like that, and I think that that is probably why, because when I watch movies, like old-time movies from this era, kind of reminds me of watching these kinds of movies when I was a kid, because my parents showed me Lawrence of Arabia when I was like 6, 7, like, and when I say that, I mean, they watched it, and I played with my army men on the ground while they watched their movie. It was kind of,
play with your toys on the floor, child, while we watch our movie.
It was one of those things. I remember a lot of the movie, and anytime there was gunfire, I paid attention, and there was a lot of gunfire, so I remember some of the movie, but I could not speak to it. But there are a lot of movies like that, Hello Dolly and Yankee Doodle Dandy and all kinds of old movies that my parents showed me when I was a kid. So I have an appreciation for them, particularly from this era. And Casablanca is probably my favorite movie from this era. So seeing Humphrey Bogart in the Maltese Falcon worked for me.
You see, I'm not that big of a fan of the Casablanca.
And that's fair.
I've seen it. And yeah, it didn't give me... The furthest back I go really with films that I like that are considered old. I really like the 80s. Mm-hmm. Like, a film I watched a ton with Mom, I mean, like, repeated viewings a bunch, was a movie called The Man from Snowy River.
I don't think I'm familiar.
It's from 1982. And I mean, I think it's a good movie, but the thing is, it's pretty hammy, and it stars Kirk Douglas is like the biggest name that's in it. I think it's a good movie. It warranted a sequel that was terrible. But we watched it a lot, and I think that's my old movie era. Well, yeah, you apparently did get raised up in that 40s time period. And again, I get why people would like them. They're endearing. There's nothing bad about them. It's just I've never jived.
Yeah, and I've got a bunch of Hitchcock movies. I've got a bunch of the old Universal horror movies, and it's just kind of one of those things where every couple months I'll just get into the mood for it, and I'll just blast through some of them. Final thoughts here on Maltese Falcon. This was a really fun mystery movie. I was enjoying the journey. I genuinely didn't predict the outcome and what was going to happen. There were so many players involved with this particular crime. This movie's got Mary Astor. This movie also has Peter Lorre, which might be one of the more recognizable faces in old Hollywood. Really like Peter Lorre. And then another spotlight performance for me was Sidney Greenstreet as Casper Gutman. He has such a big, I felt like there are a lot of big mobster bad guys in Batman the Animated Series that were based off of characters like this one. Just such a big, jolly, kind of crime boss type guy. And I really dug the performance. Dialogue was insane. It was super, super snappy. A lot of just great dialogue from this particular era in film. There's one scene where Peter Lorre pulls a gun on Humphrey Bogart, and Humphrey Bogart knocks it out of his hands and slaps him, and Peter Lorre is like, "That's the second time you've laid hands on me." And Bogart goes, "You're gonna get slapped and you're gonna like it," and then just smacks him 3 times straight across the face. I was like, my goodness,
you're gonna like it.
But there's something about the confident, arrogant attitude that he's got that I enjoy. So Maltese Falcon rocked for me. I had a really fun time with this. This was one of the better films that I've seen from this particular area. It is over on HBO Max.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. So that's going to bring us to my other recommend that I have. And it's going to be a bit of a revisit for us, but that's because I've watched it since Logan has talked about it, and I just want to mention it.
Hell yeah.
It's not a whole ton of substance to get through, so it'll be quick. But Death to 2020 is a Netflix mockumentary, and emphasis on the mock, and that's about the year 2020 and how it can be perceived as a comedy. It basically turns everything pretty serious about 2020, because let's face it, the year 2020 is pretty serious. And sort of, makes fun of it, but at the same time, there are some irreverent moments where something that's said as a joke is eerily close to what was also actually kind of said. And so the idea is that it's pointing at the ridiculous of the year. Meanwhile, Samuel L. Jackson is just in this room of windows saying how he really feels.
Right.
There's nothing comedic about Samuel L. Jackson's part. He's the overarching, not narrator, because that honor belongs to Lawrence Fishburne. But Samuel L. Jackson is the straight man that they cut to just say observations about the year, basically. Well, meanwhile, everyone else is playing a caricature of a scientist or a YouTube creator or a novelist or a Republican pundit or social media exec. So, it's everybody that was on television last year, they have a mirrored image of in this. And there's some stand-up performances. Lisa Kudrow was hilarious fun as the Republican, I guess, press correspondent for the White House is kind of what they're going for with her character, or at least just a Republican politician of some sort.
The joke of conservative voices are being silenced is just so on the nose. It's so funny.
It is so on the nose. It's so true to the ridiculousness of their claim. And like, not to get political on here or anything like that, but like there are a lot of observations here that are ridiculous for both sides. And it's not just poking at America. Like, there are things that happen that were ridiculous in England. And there's a bit where Boris Johnson gets supplanted into another body, and they have him out in this other body trying to rule, and they have to quickly put him back in the other one because it wasn't going to work. The person who played Boris Johnson as the body transplant was a solid impersonation. It was pretty shocking how well they did with that. But it was about, I don't know, 2 minutes of glory for that actor. I hope he gets more work. I like Hugh Grant as the British, like, sexist, racist professor guy.
Yes. That's a great way to describe him.
He's like, don't say I'm wrong or call me delusional or something. He's like my daughter and her friends do. Like my wife and her friends do. And my friends.
It was a great performance from him. Tennyson Foss was the name they came up for him.
It was good, and it's quick. It's 1 hour and 10, and it may not be for everyone. There are some that may not agree with some of the politics that are charging the background writing of this. But I don't know. I had some giggles, and I think it's nice to bring it up now because we're still pretty deep in the drama that is continued from 2020 into 2021, but there is some psychological distance now from the year of. So I think it's worth visiting to try and, I don't know, add some grays to the blacks that are in your memory instead of just seeing 2020 as this demonic year that destroyed everything. Definitely was a dark time, but there's comedy is tragedy plus time, and I think we've had a little bit of time, so Death 2020 is a recommend from me. Nice.
Yeah, it's a solid recommend for me as well. I remember talking about it a couple months ago, right after I saw it on New Year's Eve with a couple of my friends. Super, super funny. I love everyone in there. I think my tip of the cap has to go to Kristen Miliotti's character, the QAnon believer, MAGA supporter girl.
Oh my God, yes. She is a very unnerving smile/stare.
Yes, she did.
It's pretty spot on.
She did a great job of embodying that mindset and attitude. So tip of the cap to her. She was my favorite, oh my gosh, performance in the whole thing. So absolutely worth checking out. This is something I want to review again sometime soon. Maybe once I get my stimulus check in the next couple of days. I'll well, actually, this is coming out next week. Hopefully, by the time this airs, we'll have our stimmies, my friend.
Yeah, it may be. I know it's supposed to at least be before the end of March or early April, so that'll be interesting. But
sweet.
The Death 2020. I agree with the title as well. 2020 can rest in the history books. But for now, that'll take us to our shows. We want to go through. I have a recommend and you have an avoid.
I do.
So do you want to just do this out of order, or do you want to hit the recommend then the avoid?
Hey, so you went last, so I'll go this time, and then I'll give my avoid because it's not a full avoid. There's just one reason why I don't want you to watch it.
What is it?
Everything else is fine.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
And then we can get back over to your show. Okay. So I am going to put this on the avoid side, but there's a little bit of recommend here. But it's America's National Parks over on Disney Plus. This is another
so you just hate natural parks.
Yes, this is another nature documentary recommendation for me. So the reason this is in the avoid, this is the horniest documentary series I have ever watched in my life.
Interesting.
There is so much animal sex in this show. It is uncomfortable. They show like at least 4 or 5 dicks per episode. There is like non-stop fucking. There's
more penis than you see in the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's so strange to me. So America's National Parks is a documentary series where they spotlight. I want to say 8 of the national parks that we have around the United States. So there's episodes on Yellowstone, there's episodes on the Smokies, on Yosemite, all kinds of stuff. And I was hoping that since it was focused on the national park, that there would be a fair balance between the history of the park, like how did this get signed into law kind of thing, what are the birds, what's the geology look like tell us about the park. It's really just showing you the animals that are in the park. And I don't think I've seen an episode yet that doesn't have bison. There's a lot of bison in America, and there's a lot of bison in our national parks. So it gets a little redundant because, like, one of the 8 animals is going to be bison in every fucking episode.
And here we have the bison. And did we mention the bison?
The bison.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the bison. Oh, and what about the bison?
So there's some episodes that aren't quite as horny as the others, but it is just surprising to me. And I couldn't recommend it. It's just such a strange show. And I don't know why there's so much focus on mating. And there's so much uncomfortable dialogue. I should have written some of this shit down, but I don't know if I would have been comfortable saying it out loud. But the way that they narrate the mating is so weird. There are so many, that's what she said, that's what she said, that's what she said. You could literally sit there and do that for 2.5 minutes straight while there's 2 rams fucking. And it's so weird. They will literally do full on slow motion close-ups of genitals. It's really strange. So America's National Parks is over on Disney Plus. There is great stuff.
May not be kid friendly.
May make you a little bit uncomfortable. But maybe worth checking out, especially if you live near one or you're about to go visit one. Maybe worth just spending 45 minutes on the episode, and just take it with a grain of salt. It's there now. So America's National Parks. There you go.
Here's the review. That's I think it's like 1 review on IMDb of this show. This is 7 reviews, but here's one that gave it 3 out of 20 stars that IMDb uses. This docuseries plays like when animals attack. Their narrator's voice is beyond irritating, and rather than seeing the beauty and majesty of the national parks and their inhabitants, we see animals killing each other as the narrator ensures with his tone that it's all very dramatic. Thank you, All Knit the Diner. Awful narration focused on the food chain, it said.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fighting and killing and stuff, but I mean, that is in pretty much every, if you're going to focus on animals, you got to talk about how they eat. I just, that's kind of okay, Planet Earth shows animals dying in that way, so that doesn't really bother me. It's the mating.
Well, I mean, you gotta have a balance of both. You gotta have the creation of life as well as the end of life, but if you have an extreme of either,
yeah, it's there's one scene where they show the animal slow motion pulling its and to so that it can start mating, and it's you don't need to go that far. You don't have to show everything about the mating process between these rams.
I feel like they mated, and then you can move on.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's how the fuck is this on Disney Plus? And I'm completely fine with humans having sex on screen. There's just something strange about documentary watching animals do it. So yeah, there you go. I feel awkward now. So John, let's throw it over to you and see what you've got.
Well, mine unfortunately has a pun right in the title, given what we just talked about. But my recommend is Blown Away. But that's on Netflix, not Disney Plus. It has no relation to animals. In fact, it's all humans, and not humans doing that. It's humans making glass. Now, I didn't really watch the first season because I didn't really like some of the contestants. It's up to opinion, because my wife really loved the first season. But I did watch the entirety of season 2, because yes, there are 2 on Netflix. This is a reality show. You've seen it before. It'll never die. You got a list of people who are going to start this competition. They're going to make a piece of art based on a prompt that they're given by some judges. The episode records and does a hot take of this person saying this, and then this person's glass thing breaks, or this person's glass thing's coming out awesome. The judges have some discussion, and then at the end it shows you the finished pieces from each person, and then someone is eliminated. Overall, they're working towards a $60,000 goal and a feature in a certain famous glass magazine. Oh no, not even that. It's a residency. I remember it's a residency at a very prestigious like art school or museum. It's like a position that would set you up. So everyone's very intense. And also everyone's very talented. Like, there are some pretty things. I like seeing people do shit that I just can't do. So, like...
Right, yeah.
I love Skin Wars, body painting. There's some artwork in there that is just freaking ridiculous. And I'm like, I don't understand how these people's brains work. And this is the same thing. Like, glass blowing apparently takes all kinds. Because there's a interesting diversity of personalities and people that's on this show that are all glass blowers. And they all have equal passion for it, but they all come at it from a slightly different angle. One of them is losing her eyesight. And glassblowing is actually making the progression worse. But it's what she loves to do.
Interesting.
And so she does it anyway.
That's sad.
It is sad. And it's just like, wow, talk about suffering for your art. Like, you're going to go blind. It's inevitable, but you could delay it just by not doing the thing you enjoy doing.
Yeah, that sucks. Really, really sucks. Reminds me of Tessa Thompson in Creed with her hearing. But yeah, no, dude, I love glassblowing. This is super, super cool. I did not know that there was a so this you're telling me that Netflix has got a glass blowing competition show?
Yes.
Because, yeah, I want to watch this. I'm going to go tell Jacqueline about this. She was actually complaining today about not having anything to watch. By the way, she did catch that entire, what was the...
Cecil Hotel
show that you talked about recently. So, folks, I recommended that to my wife, and she got through that in, I think, 2 days. Maybe it was one afternoon.
Nice.
1 or 2 afternoons. I can't quite remember.
It could be. It's not that long. It's only like 6 or 7 episodes, I think,
4.
if I remember correctly. It's not super long.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's super short.
Yeah.
It's just the episodes are kind of long.
She really, really liked it. She said she didn't like the ending, but she really, really wants me to watch it. So I'll have to tell her about this as well, because this seems like something that I would get into. Going back to Silver Dollar City, I always have to stand there and watch the glass blowers for just a couple of minutes. I've never bought anything from the glass shop there at Silver Dollar, but I've always wanted to. It's just always really expensive, and I'm afraid I might break it while traveling, but I love watching glass blowing, so this show seems super, super cool.
Yeah, I agree. The glass blowing fascinated me as a child. It was always fun to be slightly above and looking through that glass down at the glass blowing that was going on. I always thought, as a kid too, like, how weird is it that your job is to be watched all day?
Yes.
Like a zoo animal.
Behind a glass wall.
Yeah, like everyone's like, ooh, look at him go, honey. It's like, yeah, look at me go. This is real fucked up and weird. But yeah, no, glass blowing is a great art, and fuck, it's difficult and hot, and I could never do it. So bravo. But otherwise, that is our shows. So that will bring us to our report back section, which I am excited for this week, because I think we've got a strange mixture to go through here.
Sure do.
So we just went through Mind Blown Away. So we're going to jump onto your report back, which is a classic Jack Black movie. What did you think of your assignment this week?
Man, I can't wait to talk about School of Rocks. Let's dive in. Okay, first off, I loved this movie. I have problems with it. You could not make this today. You just couldn't. This movie requires a huge leap when it comes to, do you actually believe that this is what would happen, or is this some type of weird surrealism that's going on here? At the end of the day, I love this movie. I had so much fun with it. I felt really, really inspired, and just fell in love with Jack Black's ability to connect with the kids and to help them see their own strengths and to shine their lights brightly and to step into self-confidence. I absolutely loved how the kids were on his side throughout the whole thing. It was so cool to watch them accept roles of like lesser position, you know, like security and stuff like that. And
yeah,
man, okay, so Jack Black was great. The kids were great. I thought the music was incredible. What else do I want to say about this movie? All right, so the first 15 minutes, to really get into it, the first 15 minutes, I was like, oh man, this is bad. This is not aged well. The acting is terrible. This plot is ridiculous. I struggled with him, with Jack Black taking his roommate's name to get the job. Because I knew right off the bat, like, oh, well, this is all going to end poorly.
There's going to be comeuppance at some point with this shit.
Yeah, and I was really, really hoping it wasn't going to be that. I was really hoping he was actually going to be a music teacher that just happened to be really good at inspiring people. So that was an unexpected element of tension for me. It led to a lot of hilarious moments, though. This movie was a blast. It was so much fun. These kids gave incredible performances. I don't know if they were actually the people playing the instruments and stuff, or if that was just sounded over, but it looked awesome. Kids were so much fun, and the whole big concert at the end, like, my goodness, it's like a 20-minute smile fest. So this movie left me feeling really, really good and really, really inspired. Yeah, I had very, very complicated feelings when we got to the scene where he ran away from the cops and everyone found out that he was not, in fact, Ned Schneebly. I was like, no.
Like, wait, so who is this stranger?
I was like, no, he'd be arrested and he'd be doing 25 to life or something. I don't think he gets away tonight.
Yeah, would not have a happy ending.
That was one scene where I was like, no, in reality, this is not what would happen. But it's a movie, so I just have to kind of go with it. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. This is something I want to be checking out kind of on a regular basis. I want to get familiar with this movie. I want to get comfortable with it. I had a lot of fun with school.
I want to American National Parks this movie. No, yeah, I agree. I
want to buy this movie and keep it on my shelf.
Buy this movie and keep it in my collection. So I haven't seen this movie since I was young. I honestly can't remember how old I was the last time I watched it, but I've seen it multiple times. And I have trouble with cringe comedy. So there are certain scenes in this movie that are very difficult for me to get through. Most scenes that involve him, and I think it was either the vice principal or the principal.
Joan Cusack?
Yes. I mean, I love her.
Oh, I loved her.
But the scenes with her are so awkward most of the time that I'm just in a ball in the chair. I'm not good at anxious comedy because I have anxiety, so when anxiety is being projected at me and I have to empathize with a character feeling more anxiety than I already am feeling, it just becomes kind of an overload.
That I completely get that. Sometimes it works for me. It often doesn't. In this particular case, it worked. I really, really liked Joan Cusack in this movie. I thought her performance was really, really good. I didn't always like her, but I thought her performance was good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That the scene where she starts to open up to Jack Black at the bar was hilarious to me. I thought that was really well done. I was scared it was gonna get creepy, but it didn't get creepy at all. So I was happy with that.
It's a good movie, and I think it's really endearing. It also shows how ridiculous Jack Black can get, and you just accept what he's doing because he just has the energy to be like, everything's crazy, but like, I'm into it, so you're into it too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a thing that I don't really see in a lot of comedic actors today, to be honest. Like, I kind of miss Jack Black on screen. I know he's not like gone or anything. I know he still does stuff. He's still in the what do you call them? The jungle, the Jumanji movies. He's still in Jumanji movies, and he's great.
Incredibly funny
in those movies. I never saw The House with the Clock in Its Walls. I assume it's somewhat mediocre, but like, I want to see Jack Black in it regardless.
I'll let you check that one out.
Yeah, go ahead. So yeah, I think this is definitely one to watch if you're a fan of Jack Black's work and you have not caught School of Rock.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a full recommend for me. I think I gave this an 8 out of 10. Miranda Cosgrove, I did not know she was in this movie. I thought she was absolutely awesome in this movie as the band manager. All these kids had such great performances. There are so many moments where like, really, when this movie came alive was when he started to come up with the idea of like the band project, rock band. It starts assigning kids roles. Like, that was the moment where I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is like pure cinematic joy. Like, I'm having so much fun with this right now. I love the moment where don't remember the girl's name, but she can't go on stage because she's fat, and he does such an incredible job of acknowledging the situation, but giving her the confidence that she needs to ignore what the haters could say, and to, you know, share her gift with the world, share her talent with the world. And if she does it, she could actually make people like envious and jealous and stuff. So I loved his approach to it. I thought he did such a really good job of connecting to kids in that situation. And then there's, you know, a dozen other situations where he does a really good job of connecting to kids. One kid that stood out to me was the guitarist. Zach Mooneyham. But there's a moment where Jack Black sees Zach's dad like screaming at him in the parking lot, and then he basically goes into class, and Jack Black sets up an entire exercise just to teach Zach a lesson about telling bullies to what do they say? Stuff it, suck it. I can't quite remember what they step off. That's what it is. Step off.
Step off.
Yeah.
Suck it. I think
And
suck
he-
it would make an entirely different movie rating.
Yes, it would. Step off. That's the term. And he like creates this impromptu rock song, Step Off, and he like teaches these kids the benefit of feeling angry and what they can do if they use their anger right. And I was like, holy shit, this is so amazing. So as a guy who works for a leadership development company, there are so many things he does well. There's a lot of things he does really, really wrong. He is so incredible at motivating people and so incredible at manipulating people. So I have complicated feelings about him as a person, but I loved where this movie ended up. I can't believe this never got any kind of a sequel. I feel like this would be a great movie to eventually come back to. But yeah, School of Rock, dude, 2 thumbs up for me.
Nice. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I figured you would. It's a good time. I always had good feelings about it. So, but speaking of movies that I have feelings about that I don't know how to address them, do you want to move on to the next one?
Oh yeah, so you got Rock of Ages on your
Rock
list.
of Ages, 2012 film with Tom Cruise, Alec Baldwin, Russell Brand. You've got the 2 leads played by Diego Boneta and Julianne Hough. And you've got Catherine Zeta-Jones in here, apparently. I did not know she was going to be in this movie, but she is. And speaking of things I didn't know about this movie, it is a jukebox musical. I didn't remember that at all. I remember
that from the trailers.
I remember mentioning last week I had seen the trailer, so I guess I forgot. I totally blocked out the musical part. And the scene that I did remember from the trailer was not in the movie.
Really?
Just wasn't in the movie. I guess it was just a gag for the trailer, but I distinctly remember a scene where Tom Cruise is just talking to someone else, and a groupie gets in and asks him to sign her bra or her chest.
Oh yeah, that's in the trailer.
And without even looking at her.
Yeah, I remember that in the trailer. That scene's not in the movie?
Yeah, without even looking at her, he just signs, and then she's like taken away. And it doesn't happen in the movie. I don't know. I don't know. I liked that moment in the trailer because it really, I think it embodied his character better than some of the scenes they chose to keep in this movie did. And by character, I mean he's just Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, the Eagles. He's all of those bands like all just lumped into one in this fictitious world of rock that also is illustrated by real life songs. You know, this is classic 80s, classic rock all over, all day, every hour. You're going to hear songs from classics like Poison, from Whitesnake, from Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Journey. You've got all those guys in here. There are a couple classics that are left out, though I don't know where you'd fit AC/DC anywhere in this movie. It's interesting. It has a gay couple in it. They're 2 men that realize that they are gay. And that couple up. And, I mean, it's pretty obvious who I'm talking about once you start the movie, but, like, it's not necessarily expected. I kind of like it. It's pretty decent representation, if not played for a few too many laughs in some scenarios. But otherwise, it was a good time. Tom Cruise's character is just the quintessential always on drugs, I guess, rock star who's not paying attention to jack shit except just vibing all the time, I guess. And having all the sex. The 2 leads are about as generic as you can get as written characters. Sherry and Drew, both of them have dreams of being singers, so they both come to LA in order to establish their dreams. She is struck with tragedy. Her suitcase right when she comes to LA is stolen from her. And Drew, a barkeep or a back barkeep or whatever it's called, at a place called, I can't remember what the hell it's called, but it's this very, very popular bar for rock fans. The Bourbon, I think is what it was called, something like that. And he works there, and he sees her having trouble and is like, hey, I'll cheer you up. And he does, and he gets her a job at the Bourbon Room, which is what it's called. And they go on a date the next day, and she... This is a running theme that we noticed in this movie. The next day, they go on a date, and she's got whole new clothes. and like whole new accessories. Meanwhile, her suitcase with all the belongings she had got stolen the day before.
Oh my gosh.
This happens.
Well, that's a continuity issue.
It is a huge continuity issue. I know people are like, well, musicals. Well, okay, explain this one. At one point later in the movie, she goes up to the Hollywood sign, and her and Drew meet up there. Not on purpose. They've had a rocky bit of their relationship at this point. But they meet up there. And the way she got to the Hollywood sign, and I know this for a fact because she leaves with it, she leaves by getting into a taxi that literally drives over the ground off-road to leave the shot. It's like bumming along on the hills, leaving the shot as the camera moves. I'm like, so that means she paid a taxi driver to drive up an unpaved hill behind a Hollywood sign.
Yeah.
And told him to wait while she went out to go contemplate her life at the Hollywood sign and look over Los Angeles and come back.
Interesting.
So that's weird. But musical, okay, fine, musical. But otherwise, the story's pretty generic. It's a few interweaving stories, but it's not as good as, like, I think that Chicago is. I think, what's it called? It's a movie, I don't think it's called The Burlesque, but it's a movie about burlesque. It's got Cher in it.
Burlesque is the name of a movie, yeah.
It's just called Burlesque? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
That one's good, as well as one that has Ewan McGregor. It's called...
It's by the same guy who did Romeo plus Juliet.
Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge, thank you.
There
Yes, I don't like Moulin Rouge.
Some people, yeah, I'd say some people don't have a big fondness for it, but I think Moulin Rouge does the interweaving, like, storylines a little better than Rock of Ages does, only because I think it's just done at a better technical level. Rock of Ages feels very generic.
Okay.
All the like big moments where there's dancing going on, like there's a huge number in this place with what's her name, Mary J. Blige, and she's the owner of a gentleman's club. And there's this big piece where all of the dancers there like get on stage all at once. They're pole dancing, but like very extravagantly, and the camera's meant to be like swooping around and like getting in on the action and having this kinetic energy. And it kind of does at like the very most literal sense. It's like you took a textbook that tells you how to film one of those types of scenes and just followed it by page. Nothing felt, driven by the scene. Just felt like this is how you edit. This is how you edit this scene, and now we're going to move on to the next scene that we're going to edit. And that just kind of felt like this whole movie. It was just kind of made by people who knew what they were doing and kind of just drove on autopilot the entire time and pumped out a pretty decent movie.
At least Moulin Rouge has a really wild and unique kinetic energy to the movie. It kind of at times, like, I don't care for it. It's kind of one of those headache movies for me where it's just so noisy that I just don't track with it. It's not my movie. But I have not seen Rock of Ages. I almost think that being boring is worse than being bad in some ways.
I mean, there were moments of enjoyment in here. I loved everything with Russell Brand and what's his name? Alec Baldwin. Those two were hilarious in this movie.
I love Baldwin. Brand is hit and miss.
I think this is the movie Brand was like. This movie, when Brand saw the script, he was like, oh yeah, I'm meant to be in this. Like, this is exactly his aesthetic. And I even told anybody, I was like, why doesn't Russell Brand just own a bar like this? Like, what? This is entirely his aesthetic. This is entirely his life. Some of the songs, I love a lot of the music. This movie ends, the finale song is a Journey song, which I'm all there for because Journey is my absolute favorite band, probably from the 80s era. But the rules of this universe are so weird. Like, the song was written in this movie universe by Drew, but it's a Journey song.
Oh, that is strange.
Yet,
okay.
we see posters of, like, Aerosmith and such in the background in certain areas. So those bands do exist, which means he just ripped off Journey?
Yeah, that is interesting. That's weird.
It's very nice.
So some of the big bands exist, and I guess some don't.
I guess. And, like, I was like, wait, is this like a semi-origin story for Steve Perry, like an alternate universe? No, his name's Drew Boley in the movie. He's not Steve Perry. But, like, they should have just called him Steve Perry and, like, been like, yeah, whatever, this is the beginning of Journey, I guess. It's not real, but, like, there you go. It would fix that weird, like, what songs do and don't exist, I don't know. There are moments where they'll go into song that it didn't feel warranted. there's a moment where they're on a date, Drew and Sherry, and by date, they go to like this record store to just look through music because they both like music. Aha, you get it. And they're looking through records and they talk about how he has stage fright and that kind of gets in the way of him being a lead singer, which of course it does. And she gives him advice of just breathe. Just take a deep breath through your mouth and out your nose, or whatever the opposite, I guess. And I'm like, that's not how you fix stage fright, but all right. And then they break into song, like right after that conversation. Usually the rule of thumb is if the level of emotion can't be met by talking or by shouting, it has to be through singing. Like the emotion of the scene has to like swell up to the point where the character feels like, I have to sing in order for this to really be, for me to meet how I feel to you, the viewer. There are moments in this where like they break out into music from nowhere and it just feels real weird. That's
always the worst in musicals, when the songs just break out of nowhere and they don't feel like they really should have started there. That's a hard sin for me to forgive in a musical.
Yeah, but other than that, like, Tom Cruise was interesting to watch, but man, I know he wanted to have fun with this. I'm sure he saw the script and was like, I get to play like a weird, horny but very strange rock star, and there are moments that made me giggle with like how strange he was being. But if I'm gonna watch a sensational Tom Cruise performance that's just outside of reality, I'm gonna watch Tropic Thunder again.
Oh, for sure.
With him as Lev Grossman, like all time. Like that is the Tom Cruise weird performance to watch forever, and it's just hypnotizing. This is what we would have gotten if he had never been Lev Grossman, and this would have been what we had to settle for. But we live in a world with Tropic Thunder, so I'm happy with that. But otherwise, 5 or 6 out of 10. If you love it, I get it. But
interesting.
I also don't.
Well, I might check it out at some point because I can handle Tom Cruise at his Lestrade, so I could probably handle Tom Cruise at his Rock of Ages. I like him in Interview with the Vampire, and I think I'm in the minority on that. But thanks for checking out Rock of Ages. Are you ready to get into the assignments for next week?
Oh yeah, so what are we going to watch this coming week that we're going to do all of this again?
Cool. Alright, I am going to throw the BFG your way. This is the 20...
Big fucking giant.
Oh yeah, big fucking gun. The Big Friendly Giant.
Yes, they totally knew what they were doing when they titled this movie.
I know,
I know it's based on a book.
Right.
But you gotta change something when society demands it.
Yep. Alright, so we've got the 2016 Steven Spielberg movie. I saw this in theaters. I have not seen it since. I saw it pretty late at night after working that day, and I was probably not in an attitude where I was going to have a good time with this movie, even if it was all that good, but I did not enjoy this movie all that much. It's strange because it looks great. There's just something about the story to me that just didn't quite click, and I don't know why. But I'm curious to hear your perspective on this movie. I recently rewatched E.T. by Steven Spielberg, and I've kind of been thinking about going back to the BFG, so I'm going to make you go back with me. You've got Mark Rylance in here playing the Big Friendly Giant. Basic premise of the story is that there's a cute little girl who gets kidnapped by this Big Friendly Giant, and she gets thrown into this world where she discovers that there are all kinds of giants in England. And most of them are bad. In fact, he's basically like the only good giant that there is. The rest will like kill you and eat you. And so somehow
naturally,
this little girl takes it upon herself that she has to figure out a way to find peace between the people of England and the giants. It's very much formatted like a children's book. I remember this having like the children's book type effects at the beginning and the end and that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to know what you think. There's some really stunning animation in this scene, particularly there's one particular night scene that just looks visually like just fucking awesome. This is not one of my favorite Spielbergs, but I am curious to know what you think about the BFG.
Interesting. Yeah, I know for a fact that if I was a kid when this movie came out, like 10 years old, still living at home, still doing school, I 100% would have seen this movie. Like, these are the types of movies that I was exposed to growing up. Not necessarily for any reason outside of maybe like, oh, family friendly, the kids will love this, so the parents put it in, but also just because I think like my parents knew I was a fantasy person, and like they see giant in the movie, so naturally I must watch it. But I'm curious. I've hesitated to click on this a lot over time because this has been streaming for years now.
Sure.
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure
it's
on and
almost
off.
5 years old now.
Yeah, and it's been on and off platforms for a few years now. I've seen it in a couple places. And yeah, I've gotten all the way to like clicking on it to see like its profile page or whatever you would call it on Netflix.
Sure, yeah.
And then I've still backed out because it does have that generic feeling to it, and that's what I've heard. But now I have a reason to go ahead and click play and find out what made Spielberg so boring.
Yeah.
He apparently can do that sometimes, and it's so weird to me.
I really don't know what it is, because there are so many scenes in this movie that look incredible, and some animation and the way they shoot the giants where you're just like, I've never seen anything like this before. And the characters aren't terrible either. So there's I think this is just one of those weird movies. So I want to go back to it. I want to explore this again, and I'm excited that you're going to watch this with me. But BFG on Disney Plus is your assignment. So what are you going to stick me with this week?
So speaking of sticking, I'm going to assign you something that has a lot of pointy swords in it. So I'm going to assign you the 47 Ronin.
Oh, hell yeah.
And this, I want to clarify for audiences, is not the 2013 Keanu Reeves 47 Ronin. This is the 1941 47 Ronin. I believe this is streaming on HBO Max, but I cannot so far find an answer.
Yes, yeah. I'm looking at it right now on HBO Max. So, fun fact, am I correct? So, you got School of Rock this episode. Last episode it was Seven Samurai. Yeah.
Seven Samurai.
So now it's 47 Ronin. So this is a 1941 movie. I am trying to learn more about this, but I'll report fully on it next week. But yeah, this is a 4-hour movie, and it is actually broken up into 2 parts on HBO Max. So there's the 47 Ronin Part 1, which is an hour and 52 minutes, and then there's the 47 Ronin Part 2, which is an hour and 51 minutes.
I didn't realize I was assigning you a fucking novel.
No, you're fine. I will check this out for sure. Jacqueline and I are planning on resting this weekend. We're going to do like 2 hours worth of yard work, and we're going to try to watch as many movies as we can this weekend. So maybe I can find some time to squeeze this in while she's watching some murder documentary show on Netflix. Who knows? But
nice.
Yeah, this looks interesting.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're looking forward to it. It is a large behemoth with 4 hours and 1 minute listed on Google. I probably won't be watching this alongside you, to be honest.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
But I'm curious for you to watch it, and maybe someday you'll get a chance to catch Keanu Reeves' 2 hour and 8 minute 47 Ronin from 2013 that everyone said super duper sucked, which I believe them, but I'd be interested to know, like, from a perspective of having seen this one, then seeing that one, what went wrong. But that's a possibility for maybe the future, but for now we're going to see how you feel about a classic. It's been remade a couple times, not just by Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I see that.
It's been other adaptations as well.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I'm not familiar with the story. I just know it by name and reputation. But so I am actually looking at the original movie poster on IMDb, and it says right there parts 1 and 2. So it looks like it might have actually been intended to be shown in parts 1 and part 2. So yeah, I'll have to look into some of the history behind this movie because I really don't know much about it, but I'll check this out and report back on it next week.
Nice. Well, looking forward to hearing about that. Another samurai classic. But otherwise, that is the episode, everyone. We have assigned each other our movies, and we are ready to go. So if you want to be around for the next go-round, be sure to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to us on. That's YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. And you can follow us on our Facebook or Twitters or our Letterboxd. All of those things, all that information you need, it's down there in the description. Hopefully you also noted that we have time codes in every episode, so if you want to come back next week and there's a particular thing that you want to know our opinion on, you can just go right to that time code and listen in, and we'd love to have you for even just that little bit. But otherwise, we appreciate you sticking around. We hope you have a good rest of your week, and we will see you, like every other time, next week. Logan, let's say goodbye.
Bye, folks.